This is the Mattel Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom Action Attack Stegosaurus. With a simple button press on its spine, it has a strike action in its tail. Before we have a look at that strike action, let's figure out how big the Stegosaurus is. It's actually at a very impressive 14 inches in length, and from the bottom of its feet to the top of its platelets, you're looking at about an 8-inch tall dinosaur. Now at this stage of the game, I haven't had a look at many of the larger dinosaurs, so the only ones I can compare it to just right now, is the Indoraptor and the Carnotaurus. Each of them had their own corresponding gimmick, if you will. Of course, you've got the strike action of the Stegosaurus, which we will look at in a second. The Indoraptor benefited from having a ton of poseability. And then the Carnotaurus had, well, its own action attack, if you remember correctly. A little button on the top of its spine gave it a little snapping feature. I couldn't tell you whether these are all scaled according to one another. I mean, really, the Carnotaurus I would imagine to be much larger. Maybe the Indoraptor would be roughly about the same size as the Stegosaurus, having not seen the movie yet. The movie isn't released in theaters yet. It's really hard to say whether we will see any of these three dinosaurs share any bit of screen time together. I suppose one bit of scaling, which would be a little bit more closer, is if we took one of the Action Pack Raptors. This just so happened to be Action Pack Raptor Blue. I think this kind of gives you a closer approximate scale. We could also bring in the Action Pack Green Raptor, and you can kind of have a scene played out in which the Raptors are about to lunge onto the Stegosaurus. So again, like the Stegosaurus probably could be a little bit bigger than what it is, but it's scaled at least the appropriate size, I think, to like these little guys here. Stegosaurus was one of my favorite dinosaurs growing up. First was the Triceratops, then I would have to say it was the Stegosaurus. I really always loved an armored up dinosaur, and of course Stegosaurus armored up. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. It has these not metal, but these bone, almost stalactites, these platelets sticking out from its spine, starting from the very front of its head here, all the way back to its tail. And at the very end of its tail are these large piercing like projectiles, these large spikes sticking out from its tail. Skeletal wise, we know that this be the case, you know, as it goes with dinosaurs. We don't really know what color their skin was. A Stegosaurus, for example, could have had very well this color. It could have also been in plaid, for all we know. But so they have to kind of make some luxuries when it comes to the design of it. At the very least, the dinosaurs will look like this, but again, the coloring may have drastically changed. A lot of them could have very well also just been all the same sort of brown or green coloring, but that's not as exciting as having a very bright kind of brown Tyrannosaurus Rex amongst the backdrop of these green Stegosauruses. So we are only going to be looking at one Stegosaurus. It would be some consideration, I guess, to the idea of picking up more of these, because I really do like these dinosaurs quite a bit. As much as I am not quite somebody that goes and excavates you know, fossil remains, I do find myself going from store to store trying to see if I can find all these dinosaurs, and I for the most part have been lucky enough. There are a few of them that I still have to grab at the time of this review, but my intent is hopefully to cover the entire Jurassic World line, so we shall see. Again, before we have a look at the action feature, which plays heavily into this platelet here, we'll look at the details on the Stegosaurus. Now, the skin is pretty consistent with some of the other dinosaurs that we've looked at, as I could best describe it as either something like a rhino or an elephant hide, is that same sort of texturing that they've added to the skin surface here of the Stegosaurus. The underbelly is about the only other off color to the otherwise green presentation that we've got here. The green is on green, and then you've got even lighter shades of almost a beige-like green on the tip of each of the blade, the platelets here, the actual spikes. But again, you've got the little bit of the cream color on the underside there. Loving the little speckled little areas that just kind of break up an otherwise almost like minty pastel green that makes up the majority of its color scheme here. But these little spots here does do a pretty good job of breaking that up. And I like also that you have an irregular shape of the detailing here, so that it's not just one stripe of color. Each of the spikes seem very unique to one another. They don't seem like if you flip the dinosaur from one side to the other, they are carbon copies to one another. It looks like they are very different. Like even like this one here to this one here, they are different. And each one of them have a texturing to it, a combination of almost like a leaf texture to that of the same sort of hide treatment that's on the majority of its body. It has one of the more unique head sculpts, almost more of a beak-like head. The eyes almost get slightly lost, though. Granted, again, the Stegosaurus here does have a smaller eye, and actually most dinosaurs do have small eyes. Raptors and stuff generally have larger eyes because they just, by scale, their heads are a little bit smaller anyways, but the Stegosaurus does have smaller eyes. I kind of wish that they could have done something a little bit more to bring the eye out. It seems almost lost. Even if they had swapped out the darker green, or maybe like a black pupil would have been something just to kind of make that eye pop a little bit, because from a distance you really don't see the pupil as well. Poseability, I have to admit, is a little on the limited side when it comes to the Stegosaurus here. Its head rotates technically, I guess, all the way around. I mean, that would kill. I mean, forget meteorites. That would kill the species if you took their heads and did that. But the heads do rotate all the way around. You can kind of hinge them back and forth and up and down. By the way, as well, a lot of these, the actual spikes, are softer plastic. They seem to get a little bit denser as you get to the top areas here, the larger ones, but the smaller ones are quite a bit of a soft material. Also could be said for these back spikes. The last thing you would want to have is little Billy sticking himself in the eye with one of these spikes, so luckily they are a little on the softer variety. I suppose you could still poke your eye out, but at least you would poke your eye out with a slightly softer plastic. I shouldn't even joke about that. Let's run through the rest of its poseability and then we'll talk about its action feature. Its legs hinge back and forth. These legs don't hinge outward. However, these legs do give you an actual somewhat slight hinge outward, kind of a split, so to speak. And the legs also move back and forth. It kind of goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. Even though as poseable as whatever the legs may end up being, the dinosaur is very specific to exactly the way it stands. Like, you would have to have it pretty much standing exactly like this. If you want to start moving legs and stuff like that, well, obviously it's going to just make it look like the dinosaur is either sleeping or dead. And we probably don't want to have either. So yeah, it is poseable, but as much as it goes without saying, the dinosaur, as posed as whatever posing you could get out of it, it's not the most agile of dinosaurs. And because it's firmly planted on 4 legs, you're really not going to be doing all that much with the feet. You get them to about there is where you get a firm, flat planted feet. And that's about all you're really going to be wanting to do with it. As for the gimmick, you can probably see over the course of this review that the tail has been swaying back and forth. It wasn't intentional, but we'll go with it anyways. There's a hinge here, and then there's a hinge here. You could just move the tail. I mean, it's not the most exciting to do it this way. The more exciting approach is to take this platelet here, and you can, if you tip it up, you can clearly see it's been cut out amongst all the other ones. All the other ones are molded into the back. This one is very distinctly different. This one is not like the others. This one is not like the Sesame Street song. So we're going to go ahead and press to activate. You're going to take this platelet and you're going to just push it down. And when you push it down, it sways its tail. Let me add further clarification to that. When you are pushing it down, hopefully my hand will actually show you, I'm not actually pushing it down this way. What I'm actually doing is I'm pushing it this way. I'm sort of pushing it, angling its way towards the tail, this direction here. And that gives you the sway. If you're pushing it straight down, it's not going to do much at all. So you want to make sure you are pushing on an angle to get the full swaying action happening from the tail. It's one of the few dinosaurs that would make sense having a swaying tail action. I wouldn't expect it necessarily on, say, the likes of a Gallimimus or Dimorphodon, for example. But this one does make sense because, again, it's got the spikes on the back, so it does make sense that for its one defense, you know, it does have this that it could be swaying towards and whipping towards, say, Velociraptors or T-Rexes. So normally tail swaying would be a bit of a yawn, but tail swaying action on something that has spikes on its tail, now that's fun. One thing I forgot to do in the Stegosaurus review, and it reminded me when I was doing the review of, well, I won't tell you what the next dinosaur is in this lineup, but needless to say, in that review, I completely forgot that I didn't scan the barcode here on Stegosaurus. So we're going to go ahead and rectify that immediately. Somebody's like, what other dinosaur review? Let's go in. We don't need to talk about that. We'll go into scan. By the way, this is my collection so far, but we're going to go into scan. I'm going to find the bottom underside of Steggy's foot. So let's go ahead and scan that now. And unlock the Stegosaurus, which I can now add to my collection. It's indicated up at the top that it is a herbivore, so it will only consume plants, despite for its very vicious looking design with all the top spikes and the spikes on its tail. It only eats plants. It really looks neat. I'm glad that they exaggerated the plates on its back. The plates look like they're almost as big as the dinosaur's body. Unfortunately, I cannot move it to speak of, so I kind of have to just sit here and watch it as it's doing whatever it's currently doing. At the very least, there should be a way to kind of aggravate the dinosaur. Something you could just tap on it and get it to get anxious or move or something along those lines. And I think that's about all we're going to be getting out of it. But what we will also be getting from this is some information, some much needed 411 on the Stegosaurus. So let's go ahead. The Stegosaurus is about 33 feet long and weighs 3.5 tons. Could you imagine? Could you imagine? She is a herbivore, feeding on ferns and palm trees. And finally, information on the Stegosaurus. Despite being a massive dinosaur, the Stegosaurus has tiny teeth. Did you know? Clearly, this is an action feature designed specifically for Stegosaurus. I can't really even think of what other action feature I would give this one, because its only other unique traits is the plate spikes that are running up and down its spine. It has poseability, but not really the most poseability. It's really about on par what you would expect for the dinosaurs to be released here from Mattel to have. Hinging in the legs, of course you can move the head a little bit, and the tail, kind of heavily more influenced by the Gimmick. I like the texturing look of it. The details on it is nice. It's a good color choice as well. It's only really with the Jurassic World releases and Jurassic Park releases that we've seen unique colors being incorporated into dinosaurs. If I had looked at my books back when I was growing up for dinosaurs, Stegosaurus probably would have been like a brown color. In fact, probably most of the dinosaurs would be a brown or green color, so it's nice that even though we don't necessarily know the color palette in which these dinosaurs actually had on their skin, it's kind of cool to kind of get a slightly mint sort of green treatment for old Steggy here. The swinging tail is a nice gimmick, and I like that it's concealed amongst the blades, the actual spikes on its back. So it's a pretty big, successful hit. I think more than it is a miss. I really do think that the Stegosaurus here turned out rather nicely. You can find the Stegosaurus as well as some of the other dinosaurs in retail stores currently and toy stores leading up, of course, to the big release of Jurassic World to theaters. And I'm sure these dinosaurs will still be found after the fact. Speaking of finding, I'm still going to have to go to the stores as there's about, at the time that you're watching this video, there's still about a couple, I think there's like 1 or 2 that I've still yet to find, but I hope they pick that up. And of course, more videos of these Jurassic World toys will be coming onto this channel. So if you guys like dinosaurs, it's going to be a lot happening on this channel for that, so stay tuned. If you're not into dinosaurs and this is kind of uninteresting for you, that's okay. We're going to have some other toys also happening on this channel as well, so we're going to kind of cover off all the bases. If you want to cover off all your bases, what kind of segue is that? Hit that little subscribe button down below. That at least will guarantee you that when new videos are coming onto this channel, you'll never miss out on. And like I said, we're going to have a look at some more Jurassic World goodies coming your way in the next couple of videos, so stay tuned for those. Thanks for watching as you always do, guys. I'll see you next time.